As the smoke cleared, the outline of a massive creature emerged, its formidable figure casting an intimidating presence over the clearing. It was a mutant gorilla, a beast of unparalleled strength and ferocity. The gorilla approached the area with cautious steps, its keen eyes scanning the battlefield for any sign of its adversary. Suddenly, its gaze locked onto a scene that made its heart pound with both shock and rage. Lying on the ground in front of it was the colossal, lifeless body of a mutant centipede, its segmented form brutally split in half. The sight was gruesome, a testament to the deadly combat that had just taken place. The gorilla's breath hitched, its mind struggling to process the sight of its fallen ally. As it surveyed the scene, the gorilla's eyes fell upon a lone figure standing near the gaping maw of the centipede's corpse. It was Lu Shang. Lu Shang stood with a casual demeanor, his body relaxed yet poised, as if the destruction around him was a mere trifle. With a deliberate motion, Lu Shang turned away from the grotesque remains of the centipede. He slid his hand into the pocket of his pants. A faint smile played on his lips as he locked eyes with the mutant gorilla, his expression one of calm determination. "Now it's your turn," he said, his voice carrying an undertone of challenge that resonated through the clearing. The gorilla's initial shock quickly morphed into unbridled fury. Its eyes burned with a seething rage, and a guttural growl erupted from deep within its chest. The sight of its fallen comrade, combined with Lu Shang's brazen provocation, ignited a fierce desire for vengeance. Clenching its fists, the gorilla advanced on Lu Shang, its massive frame trembling with barely contained wrath. Standing his ground, Lu Shang watched the advancing beast with a penetrating gaze, his hands still casually tucked in his pockets. In an instant, the mutant gorilla lunged forward, its massive fist swinging through the air with terrifying speed and power. The ground quaked beneath its might, the force of its punch shattering the earth into jagged pieces. Dust and debris flew in all directions, creating a chaotic scene of destruction. But amid the chaos, Lu Shang remained unfazed. With a swift and fluid motion, he raised his arm and intercepted the gorilla's strike effortlessly. The impact of the beast's powerful punch was absorbed by Lu Shang's arm, the force dissipating harmlessly. His expression turned serious, a stark contrast to the smile he had worn moments earlier. "You're not the first to try this," Lu Shang said, his voice steady and composed. "And you won't be the last." Just before the mutant gorilla could make a move, Lu Shang, with unparalleled speed and precision, delivered a powerful kick. The force sent the massive creature flying into the air. As it soared, a confused look crossed its face, as if it was trying to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Lu Shang, not one to waste a moment, gathered his momentum and took a mighty leap into the air. His body radiated with a golden energy, a brilliant aura that captivated everyone watching. His eyes locked onto the mutant gorilla, and with a confident smile, he taunted the beast, telling it to prepare for his next attack. In an instant, Lu Shang reached the neck of the airborne mutant gorilla. With a fierce determination, he tightly clenched his fists and, still smiling, unleashed another devastating kick. The impact was so powerful that it sliced through the gorilla's neck, severing it cleanly. Within seconds, the once formidable beast was lifeless, its head separated from its body, plummeting towards the ground. The soldiers witnessing the scene were stunned, their eyes wide with shock and awe. They had just seen Lu Shang kill two high-level mutant beasts in the blink of an eye. The sight of the gorilla's head detaching and falling was a testament to his incredible strength and skill. Yu Fei, the commander, couldn't tear his eyes away from Lu Shang. He stood there, mouth agape, looking up at the sky where the battle had taken place. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, disbelief coloring his voice. Dong Qingxue, her arms crossed, tilted her head slightly as she watched Lu Shang with a contemplative expression. She didn't need to say anything. Her silent gaze spoke volumes about her respect and admiration for his prowess. Beside her, Qin Xiaojun turned his body to the side, his eyes still glued to the sky. He pointed upwards with his finger, then turned to Dong Qingxue, his face a picture of astonishment. "Can you believe that entrance?" he exclaimed. "Even if I told anyone about this, they wouldn't believe me. They'd think it was a scene from a movie. How can someone kill high-level mutant beasts like they're nothing?" After his outburst, Qin Xiaojun looked at Dong Qingxue, searching for her thoughts on the incredible display they had just witnessed. "What do you think about all this?" he asked, his voice still filled with awe. Dong Qingxue, with her arms crossed, gazed at Lu Shang with a growing smile. She realized with a sense of amazement that Lu Shang had become significantly stronger than before. As the head of the mutant gorilla fell to the ground with a resounding thud, Lu Shang landed gracefully beside it. He turned his body back towards the battlefield, a confident smile playing on his lips, and addressed the last remaining mutant beast, a menacing mutant praying mantis. With a calm and composed demeanor, Lu Shang slipped his hands into his pockets and began to approach the creature. The mutant praying mantis, sensing the imminent threat, lowered its head towards the ground. It watched as Lu Shang closed the distance between them, and a wave of panic washed over it. Despite its formidable appearance, the mantis was intelligent enough to recognize that it had no chance of winning against Lu Shang. Fear coursed through its veins, and without a moment's hesitation, it turned its back on Lu Shang and began to flee. As the mutant praying mantis scrambled to escape, Lu Shang remained still, a smile of amusement spreading across his face. The mantis moved with surprising speed, putting considerable distance between itself and Lu Shang. It glanced ahead and saw the crack in the ground from which it had emerged. A flicker of hope ignited within it, and it felt a sense of relief. Freedom seemed within reach. But just as the mantis thought it might escape, a golden aura, unique to Lu Shang, appeared and enveloped its entire body. The radiant energy wrapped around the mantis like a shroud, halting its movements. The creature struggled, desperate to break free, but its efforts were futile. It looked around frantically, its eyes wide with shock and panic, realizing that it was completely immobilized. The source of the golden energy was none other than Lu Shang. He stood calmly, his focus unbroken, as he controlled the shimmering aura with ease. The air around him crackled with energy, anticipation building as he reached out his hand towards the heavens. Using his formidable control over the golden energy, Lu Shang began to levitate the body of the mutant praying mantis. The creature's limbs flailed wildly as it was lifted into the air, turning its head back to face Lu Shang. Panic set in, and fear gripped the mutant beast as it wondered what was happening and why its body was floating. The golden energy surrounding it began to intensify, seeping into its very being. The mutant praying mantis's panic turned to agony as the golden energy penetrated deeper into its body. It opened its mouth and let out a piercing scream, the sound echoing across the battlefield. The pain was excruciating, and it writhed in torment, unable to escape the relentless power of Lu Shang's energy. In a matter of seconds, the golden energy had completely infiltrated the mutant beast. Its body, now a vessel for the immense power, began to swell and distort. The tension reached a breaking point, and with a blinding flash, the mutant praying mantis exploded into pieces. The force of the explosion was so great that it could be seen from miles away. With the most powerful mutant beast that had emerged from the crack now defeated, Lu Shang paused to survey the battlefield. His eyes scanned the chaos, assessing the remaining threats. Determined to save Yu Fei and the others sometime, he gathered his momentum once more. Taking a deep breath, he leaped into the air, his body soaring with grace and power. Lu Shang soared through the sky, his golden energy illuminating his path as he approached the ominous crack in the ground. From this fissure, a horde of mutant beasts was emerging, their grotesque forms casting long shadows under the setting sun. As Lu Shang drew nearer, the beasts lifted their heads, their eyes locking onto the radiant figure descending towards them. Lu Shang, surveying the scene from above, couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. The sight of so many mutant beasts congregating in one place ignited a sense of challenge within him. A confident smile spread across his face, and he called out to the beasts below, telling them there was no need to retreat back into the crack. His voice, filled with unwavering determination, echoed across the battlefield. With a burst of energy, Lu Shang began his descent, his body a blur of motion as he rained down powerful punches upon the scattered mutant beasts. Each blow he delivered created a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through the air and igniting the surrounding area. The force of his attacks was so immense that it incinerated the beasts on impact, reducing them to mere ashes in a matter of seconds. The explosions continued to spread, engulfing the entire area in a fiery inferno. The mutant beasts, unable to withstand the sheer power of Lu Shang's onslaught, perished one by one. As the last of the creatures fell, a thick curtain of smoke rose into the sky, obscuring the battlefield in a haze of gray. Amidst the dissipating smoke, Lu Shang's figure emerged, descending gracefully to the ground near where Yu Fei, Qin Huaihu, Dong Qingxue, and Qin Xiaojun stood. He landed with a light thud, his presence commanding the attention of everyone around. Placing his fingers on his forehead, Lu Sheng saluted, greeting the assembled group with a gesture of respect. With a warm smile, Lu Sheng introduced himself to Yu Fei as the new recruit, his tone light and friendly. This statement took Yu Fei, Dong Qingxue, and Qin Xiaojun by surprise. They exchanged puzzled glances, not quite understanding what Lu Sheng meant by calling himself a new recruit after the incredible display of power they had just witnessed. Yu Fei, pointing at Lu Sheng with a perplexed expression, questioned whether someone who had just single-handedly massacred 3 high-level mutant beasts could really be considered a new recruit. The absurdity of the situation dawned on him, and he couldn't help but put his hand on his forehead, closing his eyes as he burst into laughter. The sheer incredulity of the notion was too much to bear. Qin Xiaojun, catching on to Yu Fei's amusement, closed his eyes and joined in the laughter, his voice ringing out across the battlefield. Dong Qingxue, usually composed and reserved, couldn't resist the infectious laughter either. She placed her hand near her mouth, her eyes closing as she let out a delighted laugh, the tension of the battle melting away in the shared moment of humor. Several hours later, darkness enveloped the landscape as the soldiers returned to the deployment base in the eastern area. The atmosphere within the base was calm, a stark contrast to the earlier chaos on the battlefield. Qin Xiaojun, always quick and efficient, prepared 2 cups of tea. He approached Lu Sheng's table, placing one of the cups in front of him. "Thank you for helping us out of a dire situation on the battlefield with the mutant beasts today," he said, his tone sincere. Lu Sheng took the teacup, closing his eyes briefly as he savored the aroma before taking a sip. The warmth of the tea was a welcome respite after the intense battle. Qin Xiaojun, holding his own teacup in one hand and placing the other on his waist, turned his head towards Lu Sheng. "If you hadn't arrived in time when the 3 high-level mutant beasts invaded, our entire battalion would have been finished. The front line wouldn't have held." Lu Sheng nodded thoughtfully, taking another sip of tea. He then moved the teacup away from his mouth and looked at Qin Xiaojun with a pleasant smile. "Instructor, are A-grade spatial cracks always as dangerous as today's? Do rank 7 mutant beasts frequently appear near them?" Dong Qingxue, who had been leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, interrupted the conversation with a serious expression. "This wasn't just a grade A spatial crack," she revealed, her voice carrying a note of concern. "It was at least a AAA grade. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so extreme." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before continuing. "When a new cave appears, there's usually an explosive period at first, but then it stabilizes." As they absorbed this information, the entrance to the military camp opened, and Commander Yu Fei stepped in. He had one hand in his pants pocket, his demeanor as commanding as ever, while he used the other to open the door. Commander Yu Fei surveyed his team, a proud smile playing on his lips as he addressed them. "I've heard tales before about Lu Sheng killing the martial grandmaster Zhang Kuei," he began, his tone serious. "I must admit, at first, I couldn't believe such a story. But now, having seen Lu Sheng's strength firsthand, I have no doubt that he is truly capable of such a feat." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The soldiers, still reeling from the day's events, listened intently. "Lu Sheng," Yu Fei continued, "with your power, you could easily compete for the star leaderboard. I believe you have what it takes to enter the top 50 ranks." The revelation hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Yu Fei stepped forward, standing directly in front of Lu Sheng. Qin Xiaojun and Dong Qingxue, curiosity piqued, asked in unison, "Which star leaderboard are you talking about, Commander?" Lu Sheng, sitting comfortably in his chair, his arm resting on the table, looked up at Yu Fei. Holding his teacup in one hand, he inquired, "Is the star leaderboard similar to the senior leaderboard at Seven Saints Universities?" Yu Fei approached Lu Sheng, his smile reassuring. "It's more or less similar," he explained. "However, the star leaderboard not only measures one's strength, but also considers merits, contributions, and several other factors." He glanced around the room, ensuring everyone was following before he continued. "I'll send a soldier back to the battlefield to count the mutant beasts you killed today. Those kills will be converted into contribution points, which you can use to obtain resources from the Eastern military. These resources will be highly beneficial for your training in the future." Lu Sheng lifted his teacup, meeting Yu Fei's gaze with a grateful smile. "Thank you, Commander," he said earnestly, appreciating the recognition and support. Commander Yu Fei decided not to bother them anymore and opted to speak with Lu Sheng later when they had more free time. He turned to the side to wave goodbye to Lu Sheng and, with a pleasant smile, reminded him that he had just arrived at the military district. Yu Fei suggested that Lu Shang rest well and not assume the battle was over, as the number of beasts could increase significantly at any moment. He urged Lu Shang to do a good job, then placed his hands behind his back, turned, and began walking away. Lu Shang watched Commander Yu Fei's retreating figure and realized how truly tired the man seemed. It was hard to imagine someone of Yu Fei's caliber being exhausted, which was a testament to the fierceness of the battles with the mutant beasts. Lu Shang knew that despite his boundless internal energy and the natural breathing method that made his physical power and chi seemingly endless, the commander was undoubtedly worn out. As Lu Shang's gaze followed Yu Fei, a smile crept onto his face. His thoughts shifted from the relentless battles to the here and now, where his stomach suddenly growled, reminding him of his hunger. He placed both hands on his belly, lowered his head, and with a surprised look, realized that despite not feeling tired, he was indeed hungry. Qin Xiaojun, noticing Lu Shang's discomfort, approached with an easy smile. Placing a reassuring hand on Lu Shang's shoulder, Qin Xiaojun turned his head towards him, closed his eyes, and teased him about his famous appetite. "Don't worry, Lu Shang," Qin Xiaojun said with a grin. "We've heard all about your legendary hunger. Rest assured, we'll take good care of you." Lu Shang turned slightly towards Qin Xiaojun, a confused look on his face, but remained silent. Qin Xiaojun decided to prepare some food for Lu Shang. As he rummaged through their supplies, an eerie energy started swirling outside the camp, a subtle reminder of the dangers lurking in the darkness. Several minutes later, Qin Xiaojun returned, carrying several cans of preserved food. He placed them on Lu Shang's table with a casual grin, the light from the lantern casting playful shadows on his face. Lu Shang grabbed a fork and a knife, staring at the cans with a look of disappointment. He couldn't help but ask Xiaojun if this was his idea of treating him well. Qin Xiaojun, standing behind him, extended his hand to the side, gesturing towards the cans. With a smile, he explained that there was no other option on the battlefield. He urged Lu Shang to eat what was available, promising that once they finished this outbreak of mutant beasts, they could return to the military district and enjoy a proper meal. Dong Qingxue, who had been quietly holding a fork in her hand, slightly turned her head towards Lu Shang. She observed him silently, her eyes soft and thoughtful. Her presence was calming, a steady force in the turbulent environment they found themselves in. As they continued their meal in relative peace, an unexpected moment of connection occurred. Suddenly, both Lu Shang and Dong Qingxue turned their heads, their eyes meeting in an unspoken exchange. Dong Qingxue couldn't help but blush, her gaze filled with a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold steel of the battlefield. She looked at Lu Shang with a depth of emotion she had never expressed before, her silence speaking volumes. Lu Shang, caught off guard by the intensity of her gaze, felt his own cheeks flush. In that moment, he remembered something from the system space, a glimpse of the future that suggested Dong Qingxue was destined to be his partner. The thought made his heart race, and he felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. Without thinking, he turned as red as a tomato, his usual composure shattered by the unexpected revelation. Feeling overwhelmed and not knowing how to handle the situation, Lu Shang quickly stood up and ran out of the tent, seeking the cool night air to calm his racing heart. Dong Qingxue, still seated and calmly eating, turned her head to watch him go. She remained silent, her expression a mixture of amusement and understanding. Qin Xiaojun's keen eyes followed the figure of Lu Shang as he slowly made his way out of the camp boundaries. Despite the apparent tranquility, an unsettling feeling gnawed at Qin Xiaojun. He couldn't help but wonder why Lu Shang, who was notoriously known for his voracious appetite, had skipped dinner. Crossing his arms and furrowing his brow, Qin Xiaojun turned his gaze towards Dong Qingxue, who was sitting a few meters away. Her usual composed demeanor seemed almost icy tonight, and Qin Xiaojun could sense an unusual tension in the air. He cleared his throat and asked, "Dong Qingxue, do you think something's up with Lu Shang? He hasn't eaten anything, which is pretty odd for him." Dong Qingxue, who had been calmly bringing a forkful of food to her mouth, paused momentarily. Her eyes closed briefly as if to gather her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and dismissive. "This is none of your business, Qin Xiaojun." Her curt response only fueled Qin Xiaojun's curiosity. He clenched his fist and looked up at the ceiling, a wry smile playing on his lips as he began to piece things together. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, he teased, "Oh, I get it. Do you have a thing for Lu Shang?" Before he could finish his sentence, Dong Qingxue stood up abruptly, her expression a storm of emotions. In a flash of anger, she hurled her bowl of noodles at Qin Xiaojun, the contents splattering across his face. Without another word, she stormed out of the mess hall, leaving Qin Shaojun standing there, stunned and dripping with broth. Recovering quickly, Qin Shaojun wiped his face and hurried after her. "Wait, Dong Qingxue. I have some questions for you," he called out, his voice echoing through the empty corridors. Meanwhile, outside the military base, Lu Sheng walked with his hands in his pockets, his head tilted back to admire the starry sky. The celestial display above was a stark contrast to the chaos that lay on the horizon. His thoughts drifted to the battle he had fought earlier in the day, and he could feel his blood stirring with excitement. Sleep would be elusive tonight, he mused. The front line, which was under the protection of the 1182 Division, seemed unusually quiet. Lu Sheng wondered if it was because most of the heavy lifting had been done during the day. Turning his head slightly, his eyes sharpened as he activated his perception ability. He could sense the distant, muffled roar of cannons, a constant reminder that the battle was far from over. Though the sounds were not as intense as they had been in the daylight hours, the conflict continued unabated. As Lu Sheng's body became enveloped in a powerful purple energy, he began to walk towards the source of the distant sounds. He decided to take a closer look at the area from where the battle cries and cannon fire were emanating.